Good evening and welcome to the show. The name of the show is Comments with Dr. James Haney, and the issue is human rights. And we're talking to Mr. Charles Henry, who's the former chairman of the board of Amnesty International, United States of America, and chairman of the Afro-American Department at Cal Berkeley. In addition, we're also talking to Mrs. WNagan4, who is a Ralph Bunche scholar and a specialist in women's issues. And let me welcome both of you to Comments. Mr. Henry, as the former chairman of the board of directors of Amnesty International, United States of America, perhaps you could get us started in this area of human rights by giving us some information about one of the most important organizations that exists. As a matter of fact, it was established in 1961, was it not?
Right, 1961, and we have about 45 national sections now throughout the world with members in about 150 countries. And our work is based on the UN Declaration for Human Rights and other international treaties. But it's more narrowly focused than that because you couldn't cover everything and be as effective, I think, as we want to be. So we work mainly in three areas, and that's to work for the release of all prisoners of conscience. And prisoners of conscience are defined as people in prison for their beliefs, color, sex, religion, language, or national origin, or have neither used nor advocated violence. So we work for the release of all of those prisoners. Secondly, we work for fair trials, fair and prompt trials for all political prisoners. And then finally, we work for an abolition of torture and the death penalty in all cases. So that, while it's a fairly narrow mandate, obviously gives us a lot to do. We don't only work on prisoners, though. I think we try to do education in human rights, and in part that's what brings us to Nashville. We've held a symposium at Fisk University, W.E.B. Du Bois Symposium on Human Rights, and so we try to work with human rights education. I don't think there's a more prominent figure in terms of human rights and scholarship and activism in human rights than W.E.B. Du Bois, so we're quite pleased to be here and work with Fisk in sponsoring this symposium.
Very good. Now, Ms. WNagan4, I would imagine that the involvement of women in this kind of activity is of recent origin, is it not? Why don't you give us some information about the part that women are playing now and indeed have played in Amnesty International?
Okay, well, Amnesty, of course, does not specifically focus on women. It focuses on all prisoners of conscience. However, there is a section, there's a special project, a women's program in Amnesty International, and in that we work on behalf of women prisoners of conscience. There are also women who are involved with us through other organizations. They're affiliated especially with national women's organizations such as NOW, and they help us. And we also have individual women helping us as well in order to publicize information about women prisoners.
Very good. And Doctor, in terms of Amnesty International, what would you say is the main thrust of the organization now? Indeed, what are some of the major projects that you have that you would like for folks to know about and perhaps give you some assistance? And what kind of assistance can we give you?
Well, one of the things we've talked about today, and a question we often get, is deals with political prisoners in the United States, human rights problems in the United States. National sections, incidentally, don't work on prisoners in their own countries because of questions of safety and partiality, etc. But one of the things we have focused on in the United States, Amnesty in particular, has been the death penalty. The United States is one of the leaders in the world in terms of the number of people on death row. And in fact, most of the world community is moving away from the death penalty. Many of our Western allies, in fact, we're the only industrialized country in the West executing people, one of the few countries that executes children and the mentally retarded. So one of the things we're launching this spring is an international campaign against the death penalty worldwide, and the United States will be a major focus of that campaign.
Now, for a while we had ended the death penalty, at least we had put a place in a moratorium on the death penalty in this country, had we not?
Right.
And it was during your administration as the chairman of the board of Amnesty International when we reinstated the death penalty. Is that, would that be correct?
The two aren't coincidental.
Okay.
No, actually, in the mid-'70s, the court decisions opened the floodgate again. Now, what did happen, though, in the last couple of years, of course, was the decision in the Oklahoma case on the death penalty, in which the court essentially recognized that there was discrimination in the carrying out of the death penalty, that blacks, indeed, who killed whites were more likely to receive the penalty, but said it wasn't the business of the courts to correct that, that the state legislatures, federal government would have to do that. So one of the things that we've worked on since then has been working with state governments and the federal government to try to end that. John Conyers, for example, has introduced a bill on executions and trying to rectify the problems involved in discrimination. What we find worldwide, and what I think you find if you look at the death penalty, is it's never fairly and equally exercised. It's always a minority, whether it be a language minority, a religious minority, the Baha'i in Iran, the Kurds in Turkey, blacks and poor people in the United States. Those are the people that tend to be executed.
Do you find that there's any